And at first I was like, I'm in. It was great, fantastic. And then that same feeling from AOL came up again, which was like, God, this is such a drag. I'm like, I'm hating it again.
Hey, got something really cool I wanted to run by and let you know what's going on. So I'm starting a group that will start taking a deep dive into each one of these episodes. So we'll collectively come together and talk about the shows, talk about the guests. I'll be bringing back some of the guests to do some Q&A sessions and really take a further dive into their story, their journey, the episode, talk about, maybe some of the things you wish I would have asked on the episodes, do some Q&A sessions and the like. As a friend put it to me, it's really like a book club, but for the podcast. So a couple times a week, we'll go in, we'll break down the favorite shows of the week, and have cool discussions around everything that we've heard, we've learned, and want to know about their journey. Some of these guests will come in and they'll teach part of what makes them awesome at what they do. And then, as always, I'll be providing regular value and content in this group. It's really cool because this only is going to cost $5 a month to join this group. And you'll be able to come in, interact with everybody else in there. So I'll put a link right in the show notes for this that you can jump in, come have a conversation with us, and we will really deep dive into each one of these episodes and help us all rise up together. Thanks for tuning in, guys. It's going to be a great show today. Having the show wasn't something I started out to do. But the day I found out somebody wanted to really sponsor the show was a really, really cool experience. So, guys, I want you to take some time to go check out Point Blank Safety Services and their new nonprofit, Blue Family Fund. These guys are doing some really, really cool things. And Stacy McGovern, who's the CEO over there, has been a dear friend, and she was a guest on the show. But these guys are literally taking, the off-duty officers and putting them out in security guard role. And here's what's cool about it is, as they're protecting our lives, they don't make a whole lot of money in that regard. No first responders are paid for the value they provide for our safety and our health and taking care of us. So these guys, Stacy and her team over at Point Blank Safety Services have really found a cool way to give back to these officers by helping them provide an additional income so they can continue to support and protect us. So do me a favor, guys. Seriously, go check out pointblanksafety.com and then go look at their nonprofit, which is Blue Family Fund. Now, this nonprofit was created because of the success of Point Blank Safety Services. They wanted to give back to the families of fallen officers and be able to give scholarships away to the families of current, police officers. So do me a favor. It would mean the world to me if you would go out and help support this show by supporting Point Blank Safety Services and their nonprofit Blue Family Fund. Just tell them Donnie has sent you. You heard it on Donnie Success Champions, and Stacy will take a tremendous and amazing care of you. Thanks, guys.
All right, guys, so this is going to be a wild, wild episode. I'm bringing you Dave Conley, and dude, let me tell you, Dave goes on this philosophical run from me, and we talk about his start going from being the guy behind the CDs for AOL to working in the government, and now he's this life coach. I promise you guys, this is a philosophical episode. He even gets me thinking about some of the things and stuff I'm doing in my life. Sit back on this one, guys. There was at one point I felt like I needed to crawl on the couch and get ready for it. So enjoy. All right, guys, so it's going to be another fun episode. I'm bringing you Dave Conley. This dude's got one of those really cool stories. I'm going to pick on him a little bit. And watch out, guys. I'm telling you, he's got a radio voice. Well, he might have a face for radio, too. We'll let you guys determine that. But he's definitely got that radio voice. So when you hear him come on, don't think he's better than me because he sounds better than me. But, Dave, welcome to the show, brother. Please tell us your story.
Thank you, Donnie. I had a friend who actually does voiceover, and he said, just because you have big hands doesn't mean you can play the piano. And I'm like, oh, fair point.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Right?
How did you get that cool, deep voice?
I'm going to blame my parents, I guess. Yeah, years of scotch and smokes? No. I can't say I've always had it. I think, certainly when I was younger, I think, I was just a little bit more amped up and a little bit more anxious and a little bit whatever. And I was probably talking way up here, but, over the course of years, here you go.
Right.
Got to get a couple of years on you and grow a big set. I don't know.
Right. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that.
Be brave. Be brave, and your voice drops.
I got 10 years, and I get the deep voice. I'm looking forward to it. So walk us through your journey, man. Walk us kind of through how your life kicked off and how you ended up here. So you were born when? No, I'm kidding. Don't go back that far.
Right. Throw the Wayback Machine into the 70s. Let's talk a little bit about it. Like, my beginning world was in corporate life. I was like on the 10-year plan of college, and I wasn't becoming a doctor. It was, after like 200 credit hours, I was like, my friend just like pulled me aside and said, hey, you know what? My company is just hiring stupid, and you are clearly one of those guys. So why don't you just like come down and
wait, the hireable or the stupid? I was confused.
Yeah, right. Right. Yes, I didn't. I didn't question him. I was just like, yeah, he's one of my closest friends, and just do what he says and good things happen. I'm like, fantastic. He's like, get your resume together. Do you have one? I'm like, no. I'm like, we'll get it together. It's like, do you have a suit or something? I'm like, yeah, sure. And I get down there, and it's like this huge cattle call. So it's just a pile of people, and I interviewed, and then I, put on my backpack and I went to class. I didn't really think too much about it. And I got a call from Human Resources the next day, and they said, hey, we'd love to offer you a job as a project manager. I'm like, okay. And again, not the smartest, guy in the world, when I just like the first thing out of my mouth was, what's a project manager do? And, she was professional enough to like completely ignore that and said, okay, how much would you like to make? And I threw out this number, and she said, well, that's good because it makes $10,000 more than that. I'm like, oh, okay. So again, my negotiation skills, not, I was, again, young, dumb, And I started this great job, and it turned out I was pretty good at it. I really loved it, and I took to it. Fish to water is just, the metaphor that comes up. And I loved it. And I loved just like getting in and problem solving, pushing things along and blocking things in order to get like the job done that the company wanted. And they said, okay, you're pretty good at this. So why don't we like up your responsibilities? And this was like when they were growing and growing and growing. They're like, okay, here, try this. Here, try this. And within just a few months after that, I was responsible for sort of the keys to the kingdom to the company. And, just serendipitously, my very first. So how did you get on the internet? What was the first, what was like the back in the day when you were like, oh, you know what? I got internet. How'd you do that?
Back when I was in the Marine Corps, so this was in the late 90s, we had the green screens to look up tools and stuff. So I was on the green screens. But really my first experience is when one of the other Marines got this boxy computer that he put on a table, and nobody else in the barracks had a computer. So we were all literally fist fighting over playing one freaking game, because, you had nothing else to do. But green screen was the first experience, but first fun experience was that dude's computer.
And like, okay, so like commercial internet, how'd you get it past the green screen? What was the next one? Were you on like Prodigy? Or were you on like MSN?
DOS. So I know we did the floppy disk, and then we did AOL, a little AOL disk through the mail.
All those little disks that you got in the mail?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, all right. So I'll apologize now because that was my responsibility. So my first gig was as project manager at AOL, and my first gig was to get 32 million people on the internet for the very first time. And that was my first job.
So literally, you're the guy that would send off all those little CDs.
Well, no, it's not like I was the guy with like, the stamps in the back room and it was the software on those things. The buck sort of stopped with me. like getting all of the pieces of that software on that.
Did you have to send me like 20 CDs until I found
Sorry. I will apologize, but not my gift, man. I'm sorry. I didn't like stamp those things out, but like we were so happy at work when we got like, these pictures where people had like, crushed these up and made like beautiful tabletops and like people like made art out of like the hundreds of CDs. But
I can't think of the sound, but yes, that one. That one. That's the look.
Mom, get off the phone.
Right. Tell me you weren't behind that horrible noise.
No, that's technology. That's a modem training. A modem has to connect with another modem.
You've got mail, right?
You've got mail, yeah.
I've got a friend who still has an AOL email address.
And what do you think of them?
How...
Right, how?
Dude, right, the Stone Age.
The 21st century.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, right.
I mean, not to show your age by any stretch.
No, it's good. I was part of the first wave of technology and internet bubble and the rest of it. So that was my first gig. And just amazing time. And, I was good at this job and I was promoted. I was one of among the fastest promoted at my company ever. I was a young executive. I had a bunch of people working for me. At one time, a couple of hundred people working for me. And God, I wasn't happy with my company and where I was, and I wasn't happy at all. And I just thought it was like the bureaucracy. We had, bought, we'd merged with Time Warner at the time, which was just had one headache after another trying to, get those cats rolling together. And, I disliked it. And finally, we were in this death spiral of just like firing people like right before Christmas, like year after year after year after year after year. And finally, I think it was 2006, 2007. I was like, am I on the list? They said yes. And I said, fantastic. I'm up and out. Thank you. It's like, make this pain stop. I was done. I took about a year off to help raise my nephew and niece, who my sister was getting divorced from my brother. Well, my sister-in-law was getting divorced from my brother, and I took in my sister-in-law. So you can guess how fun that Thanksgiving was that year.
Yeah. Hey, brother,
right.
You want to come hang out
with your ex-wife
and
who's
kid.
living in my house? Yeah,
right.
No. Yeah. There was. Yeah, it might be a wee bit of a sore point still. 12 years later.
How does that happen?
Oh, no, that's for another show probably.
Fair enough.
There's a lot going on there, and I'm very close to my sister-in-law, and she's great family, and I love my nephew and niece.
Right, fair enough.
But some things. Hey, so a buddy of mine called me and said, hey, I just got hired at this federal agency. I was outside of Washington, D.C., and he said, why don't you come and help me unfuck the government? I'm like, oh, I'm in. Whatever I can do to do that. So, he put me into the hiring process, and I was hired in to do technology at the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office. So I was running a big division there. And at first I was like, I'm in. It was great, fantastic. And then that same feeling from AOL came up again, which was like, God, this is such a drag. I'm like, I'm hating it again. I'm just disliking, what's going on.
I'm curious though,
like,
before that thought happened, did that modem sound go off first?
Right? In the middle of the night, I still hear like, you've got mail every now and then. Like you hear it a couple of million times.
Right.
Formative parts of your life. You ever been a waiter or anything?
Oh yeah, and a bartender.
Okay. Yeah, was there like a theme for the food? Was it like pizza or something?
It was Bennigan's, so it was like this mishmash Irish.
Is there a chance that you could ever eat in a Bennigan's ever again?
God, no, I couldn't eat there.
That's exactly that feeling of like, right. That's exactly that feeling of like, oh. Yeah, you hear that?
The only good thing that came from that experience is that's where I met my wife. So, and we're still together.
At AOL or at Bennigan's?
No, Bennigan's.
Or both. Yeah. Okay. Well,
there's no good things that came from AOL.
A lot of good things. A lot of good things. A lot of babies were made. A lot of money was made. A lot of good things. We got you on the internet. A lot of. We always joked that, what we were, it was a family service, but the thing that we did was bring like a gambling and porn right to
Right.
That was
mainstream.
We're right on,
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's really that porn that spread the internet. I mean, if you want to get all technical,
without a doubt, like we had features that were like like had different names to them behind the scenes. We didn't call them that, but it's like, this is the porn viewer. Like, okay, that's what it is. Like, let's put pictures in email. I'm like, guess what that's for? So like anyways, I was getting really miserable at USPTO, and I was like, I've got to switch this stuff up. Then a friend of mine could turn into a really good friend. She asked me a question. She said, when were you happiest in your life, in your career? Right. And I said, God, it was those early years at AOL. We were making such a big difference, and like everything we touched turned to gold, and like it was amazing. And I was young. And so that was no problem. And then she asked me the question that changed everything, which was, why? I'm like, huh. That's one you kind of sit back and like, why? Why was I happy? I'm like, So it turns out, the reason I was getting so miserable as I was kicked up the ladder was that I was getting further and further away from the customer. I was an executive, I had managers, and they had managers, and they had staff, and on and on and on, still making a difference, but I was so far away from making a difference to like the individual human being. So when at AOL, this was, again, back in the day that, when I had a phone on my desk, right? And when we did something crappy, my phone would start ringing. I mean, just like start ringing, and they're like, hey, put it back. I'm like, oh, okay, great. When we did something wrong, we knew about it immediately from tens of thousands of people. They were like, oh, no. And when we did something really wrong, we were on the front page of every newspaper on the planet. So like that's making a difference. Like, you are affecting the lives of people day in and day out. But, being an executive at U.S. Patent and Trademark Office, man, that is not it. You're making the world safe for patent lawyers is what you're doing. That is not my gig. So I got that why. And that was the point where like I went in for my review, and I got a powerfully mediocre review from the executive. And I'm not a mediocre review kind of guy, but, it just goes to show like what kind of mental space I was in. At the end of this review, he goes, hey, you got anything to say? And I said, I pulled off my badge. It was epic. I pulled off my badge. It had my secure ID on it, and I slid it across the table, and I said, today is my last day. And I just mic dropped it. I'm like, I'm done. And I will never forget this part. Like, I thought, like, when somebody's jaw drops open, when you say, like, your jaw hit the table, I thought that was just a saying. No, holy crap, I saw it. Like his mouth dropped open. And I said, hey, last day, thanks. I've already cleaned up my office. Here's my parking pass, whole bit, right? Like, I'm done. I'm out.
Tell me you did at least like the Breakfast Club, fist in the air as you walked out the door.
Well, okay, so he did, because the last words out of his mouth, I will never forget this, he said, there's paperwork to fill out. I'm like, okay, yeah, you got my address, right? So Mike dropped that. I called up a couple of my friends, and it was that point where became entrepreneurs, and that is white hot heroin of making a difference for individuals, because your customers. Like, what? You know their names. You know where they live. Like, it's like, hey, I'm Jack, one of my customers. Sally, one of my customers. Susan, one of my customers. And so we started a bunch of companies, like right off the bat, like 7 or 8 companies, and was learning entrepreneurship and how to start companies and what does it mean. Because like being an entrepreneur and starting a company is not just a small company growing it. It's like this own process. And so we went and did that, and then I ran my own startup for about a year. I joined startups for about a year. And did some investing in startups. Like, I was in the whole, entrepreneurography, ecosystem. And it was a little bit ago where my business model, helping other people start companies, was just not working, and I wasn't happy again. It's just like really paying attention to your feelings, because your feelings are the things that motivate you. The how you experience the world is through the feelings. That's until the pain of change outweighs the pain of staying the same. You're going to keep on doing the old patterns that you learned, probably since a child, right? I was looking at my business model, and I resolved to resolve my business model and figure it out, like what's going wrong. And I thought, what is it that I do the most of, really? And it was like all in health and wellness, and it was all about healthy just being, right? So I'm like, I really like doing that. That's like my hobby. That's like, I do that day in and day out. That's my jam. I'm like, well, would people pay me to do that? And like, turns out, yeah, they will pay you to do that. What I do now is I introduce successful people to themselves. I help you balance health and wellness with significant achievement.
So let me get this straight.
So that is you just got my 5 to 8 minute of 20 years.
Oh, don't worry.
Career to like, here I am today.
Oh, don't worry.
Standard in front of you.
Pick it apart just a little bit, because of my favorite thing that I just heard.
Yeah.
And please correct me.
And I shall.
You're helping other people that are miserable in their career like you were unscrew themselves so they can continue doing something that they don't want to do.
So check this out. Think of your life like concentric circles, like one right inside, like those stacking dolls, right?
Right.
The very, very center is you. It's your mind, your body, your spirit, the whoever's wearing the I am t-shirt at any given moment. That's you, right? And then outside of that concentric circle is your major relationships, the people you love, your friends, your family, your kids, whatever, right? Those people that are closest to you. And outside of that is your vocation. So it goes you, goes then your friends and family, and then it goes your vocation. Outside of that, your community, how you're showing up in your community, what you're doing. Outside of that, your legacy at large, like where you are in the universe, right? Like your stamp. So here's the thing. Me and so many other people I meet, but where I was for the vast majority of my life was in vocation land. It was not unusual for me to sleep at the office, and everybody's fine with that. I'm like, what? That's, thinking about that now, that is not even that doesn't mean. And then you hear people talking about like work-life balance and like, I spend so much time at work and all this, so here's the thing is that we're supposed to work, right? We're supposed to trade our time for some sort of achievement. That's built into us, and we get rewarded for it. Nobody's saying like, don't work. People are saying go work, and you get this validation from it. So people go do it, and they do a lot of it. If they are in something that they even slightly like, forget it. They will dive into that and they will hide in it. Or your friends, your family, that kind of, like, you're supposed to raise your kids. Nobody is saying don't raise your kids, right? So you'll spend a lot of time there too. So you're spending time in your vocation, you're spending time with your family, or you're feeling guilty about one of the other two, right? Because you're not spending time there. Well, guess what? You and I have the same 168 hours that I have, you have in any given week. We got that same 168. So where do you take from that in order to spend in your vocation? Where do you take from that to spend with your family? Where do you take from that to spend in your community? And you think you got a legacy that's coming from that, but you know where you take it from? The only place you have agency, the only place that you can actually control it. You don't have to worry about anyone else, and that's you, your mind, your body, your spirit. You sacrifice how you eat, how you sleep, how you are, how well you take care of yourself, all of the things that make up you, your spiritual life, your personal life, every piece. You will toss that stuff, the most important things, to you in order to take care of all of the other stuff because you think you have to. I'm like, well, you know what? As soon as you stop paying attention to yourself, your body is going to tell you, your mind is going to tell you, hey, pay attention. Pay attention to me. Until something really critical goes wrong with you, most of my clients don't even pay any attention to themselves. And not until they pay attention to themselves can they possibly bring so much more to their relationships and so much more to their vocation and their community and to their legacy. Pay attention to yourself first. Knock it out of the park everywhere else. So flip this model.
Right. So here's the thing I want to ask you, because I love it when people with this mindset come on the show, because I 100% agree with you, and then I 100% have my skeptic that comes out and says, "Why?
Lay it on.
Right?
What's your skeptic? What's your skeptic say?
The skeptic says, okay, raised in an environment where you've got to work your ass off to make anything in this world and really
All right,
go.
Put a bookmark in that for a second. We will come back to that one.
Cool.
So say that one more time.
That you got to work your ass off to get there.
Bookmark that. Let's come back. All right, go ahead.
The second one is if I spend more time on me, then I'm taking away from time to get everything else done. Now,
bookmark
I say this all with the caveat.
I got two of those, but go ahead.
Yeah. Those are the two biggies. But I say that with the caveat that I'm a firm believer of understanding yourself. I journal every morning, right? Brilliant. I take a deep dive into myself. I'm learning to meditate. I'll say that I'm not good at it.
Yeah, sure. If it was easy, everybody would do it.
Well, that's why it's called a practice and not,
Right.
You know, the best time for me to do any sort of meditation is literally on the back of a tractor, because I got nobody around. It's just me and some land. Yeah. So walk me through, because I know those are the two big skeptic things. All
right, lay out the two things you said to me.
You got to work your ass off.
Got it. Work your ass off.
And then
let me just write your words down. I want to make sure I got it. Flip open my journal, my friend.
Okay, so I'm fixing to lay out the couch here, guys. Hold on, I'm getting my feet up. I got the pillow up.
You got to work your ass off. All right, got it.
And then the second
gotta. You gotta work your ass off. All right,
get my little bit of country twang in there.
Yeah, hey, half of my family is from Tennessee and Kentucky, and every now and then, if I go visit family, I'll just come back with a little bit of a something. And people are like, "Where you grow up?" And I'm like, "I grew up in Washington D.C." Then suddenly, no accent comes in. All right, gotta work your ass off.
And then the second one is if I spend time working on me, I'm pulling away from something else to make me successful.
Spend time working on me.
Guys, I wish you could see this. He's actually writing all this down.
Wait. If I spend time working on me, I am taking away?
Yep.
Taking away from what?
Something else to make me successful.
Something else to make me successful. All right, so I hear it in your skeptical voices. Why did this guy just write this stuff?
Makes for a great podcast.
Great.
On the air.
Right. Like there's somebody like, well, you know what? We can here, we'll have the sound. You can dub this back in. We'll have the sound.
He's doing that. He's actually trying to make the pin sound on the mic. That's awesome.
All right. Okay. All right. Got to work your ass off. Okay. Here's the thing. Let's crack open the experience of human real quick. Like the manual you were supposed to get, when you were a kid. It's like, okay, here's the manual for human. I'm like, okay.
You mean the one your parents didn't get, their parents didn't get, their grandparents didn't get?
Nobody did.
But you're supposed to know this.
Right. It's like, here you go. And you're going to spend the rest of your life a bit tortured or a bit, like having these massive revelations like, oh, I finally understand. No, okay. It's like, I wish somebody had written this down. So I wish somebody had told me. All the times you say, I wish somebody had told me, this is that manual. All right. Okay. Let's flip this thing open. That manual of human life. All right. So let's think about like what it takes to really, really like be you and to change and the kind of the levels of change. The very, very top is your identity. This is your core sense of self. That's your values, your purpose. Again, that senior consciousness, that whatever it is that's wearing that I am t-shirt. That is who I am. All right, your identity. Right below that are your beliefs. So what I believe is true about life, and those ideas that determine my daily behaviors, right? So beliefs can be values or permissions or necessities or limitations. And bookmark that piece too, the limitations. So right underneath the beliefs are capabilities. And those are the set of behaviors and skills and strategies that we use to function in our daily life, right? Like I am capable of driving a car, right? And then under the capabilities are behaviors. Those are specific actions that we carry out regardless of our capability, like your behavior of meditation. That is a behavior, okay? And then underneath that is environment, so wherever we are in space, the stuff that's going on, right? And so we experience change at all levels. In our environment, that's often where I start with my clients. It's like, let's get the crappy food out of your house, right? Let's get you, let's make sure that you are not around like these toxic people that have been a part of your life. Then we start adding behaviors to it. It's like habits. It's that habit forming. It's like how to do a habit. Like what are the small changes that you want to make in your life? Not big changes, small changes in order to like move the battleship, right? And move it slowly, because the people who like change those behaviors and do it fast, how often do they like, well, it didn't really work for me, right? Then we start adding capabilities. That's learning something new. It's like, ooh, new skill, new something. It's like, oh, okay, I didn't know this. Now I do. I learned this. I mastered this. I'm doing this. Capabilities. Now, the funny thing is all of these things are also your beliefs, and it goes into your identity. Your beliefs change all the time. I mean, what is a belief that you may have had when you were a kid that you don't have right now? I'll give you mine. I believed I would be a firefighter. I'm not a firefighter. So, I was sure that I was going to be a firefighter, but your beliefs change over time.
Well, I'll give you mine. My belief growing up was success was you had to work in a skyscraper, wear the suit, drive the fancy car, have the fancy house. Once I got there, like so many other people I've interviewed, it's like, well, that lifestyle sucks. Yeah, that's not success for me.
So did you hear what you just said, Donnie? Is like you believed you needed to work really hard in a skyscraper in order to be successful. You know what?
Not work hard.
Say it again. Yeah, you did. Back this tape up.
Did I say work hard?
It's hard because you now also have a belief that you have to work your ass off. You got to work your ass off. You said it twice, my friend.
Wait, who's interviewing who?
I just heard this. Now, here's the thing. Here's the thing about that belief, because it is a belief. I have learned something is that the universe at large, whatever it is your big beliefs are, and that the universe at large has a wicked sense of humor. A wicked sense of humor. If you believe that you have to work your ass off, the universe is going to say, okay, you now have to work your ass off. Oh, you know what? If you just believe that you want to do good work and you're going to be, properly compensated for it in order to cover your nut and do what you need to do, it's funny. Those things tend to happen. It's one of those things where like your subconscious kicks into gear. It's like, you know what? I don't have to work my ass off. I need to just work and be me, and I'm going to be compensated for it.
So along that lines.
Yeah.
Every guru in the world says this.
Yeah.
Just change your thoughts and say, you know what? I'm good. Life's good. I'm me. I'm happy, and money's going to flow abundantly.
Well, okay. And?
He's all, help me out here.
And?
Help me out here. Because, I've read every guru book under the face of the sun.
Yep.
And
they make it sound easy, don't they?
Yeah, they're like, okay, you wake up every morning.
You get
I love
like
myself.
Tony
I love
Robbins.
myself. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
I mean, we go old school and bring in Jim Rohn, Napoleon Hill. Not care about Napoleon Hill doing anymore, but, whatever. How does that magic happen? Do you like that skepticism?
I'll go with that. Yeah. You remember my friend Jen, who was asking me the question, when were you happiest in your life, right?
Right.
Or happiest in your career. And then she has said why. I'm like, whoa, that's a powerful question. That is a powerful question. So start with this presupposition. Presupposition is fancy term for like, okay, this truism. And it's like, okay, this is true. Whatever it is that you're doing, whatever behavior, whatever belief you have, whatever that is, that has an positive, intentional outcome in some context, right? So it's a positive thing. And the reason you don't have what you want is because whatever is keeping that belief stuck in place is blocking you. All right? So start with some questions in order to peel this apart. First one sounds easy, but you know how many people that I run into that can't answer this one? And if you ask them this question, they'll be knocked on their heels. What do you want?
Mm-hmm.
Like, seriously, what do you want? I'm like, okay, you got something? Yeah, I got something in my mind. We'll just do this quiet. We'll do it in our heads, right? Anybody who's listening to you right now can play along at home. What do you want? I'm like, okay, you got that one. All right, so you got that. Well, what will having that do for you? I'm like, oh, okay, cool. It's like, let's raise this up a level. Now, wait a minute. Is something that you want something you can control? We talked about agency a little bit earlier, right? Like something you can control. As soon as I realize that I'm relying on someone else, I want someone else to love me. I want somebody else to provide for me. I want somebody else to do something else. It's like, you don't have control over them. You are not on their map. You are not in their world, right? This has to be stuff that you want and that you want for you. Like, okay, cool. So you got something you go on and it's like, okay, what's that going to do for you? What will having what you want do for you? And so like, okay, you got that one? Cool. Ask it again. What will having that do for you? Like, oh, all right. I got that one. This is like the 5 whys. You've heard that one, right?
Oh,
Keep on going. Go another layer deeper. It's like, well, what will having that do for you? One more time, just for shits and giggles. What will having that do for you? Okay, now you got this. What I want and what will having that do for you? Like, love it. All right. Go to step 3. How will you know when you have it? Oh, okay. Damn good question. So now you got what I want. Why do I want that? And it's like, oh, how do I know when I'm gonna have it? It's like I want the checker flag that goes up and says, oh, you know what? I have what I want. Like, fantastic. Okay, so when do you want it? Oh, that's a good one. Let's time bound this thing. Is there anybody you want it with? With whom do you want it? I'm like, that's a good one. Where do you want it? Do you want it someplace else? It's like, okay, great. And then you have to check something on this thing because you want to raise up in your consciousness. It's like, okay, what might happen if I get what I want? Because whatever change you make in your life will have some consequences. They're supposed to. It's just the ecology of things. It's like, so if you had this good outcome, here's your last question. If you had this good outcome, what unintended consequences might happen, if any? Or imagine yourself when you've already had this good outcome, all right, sometime in the future, and looking back at you now, is there anything that, would have gone, not how you wanted it to go? What would have been the consequences of that? So you got 5 things in there, and that is like, what do you want? What's that going to do for you? How do you know when you're going to have it? When do you want it? Where do you want it? With whom do you want it? And could anything go weird about it? Like, okay, if you can control all of those things, meaning that you have the agency, I mean, not control in like the big C's part of the world. You can do that. And you're well on your way to making the changes in your life that you want to make. So, you're like, anybody can stand up here and say, okay, just meditate for 10 minutes every day and you'll be fine. It's like, well, why do you want to meditate 10 days? And it's like, okay, what's it going to do for you? It's like, okay, cool. It's like, well, how do you know when you're going to be like a meditator? When you're going to put that on your CV or your resume? Okay, all right, great. You're going to meditate. Cool. It's like, when do you want it? You want it now? Cool. You're going to do it now? You're going to do it in your bedroom? What's going to be? And it's like, look, if you become a meditator, is there any downside to that? It's like, yeah, I might, spend, I might, run off to an ashram. I'm like, okay, well, cool. Is there any issue with that? Great. Okay. So now you've run meditation through this, right? Now, the magic part about all of this is that if you're looking at all this, you have the agency, you have the knowledge, you have all of the skills in order to do this. And that's the best part about all of this, is that you already have all of the resources in order to make the changes that you need to make. You don't need another book. You don't need another guru. You don't need another guy that you're following on Instagram or Facebook or whatever. You don't need like the next self-improvement podcast and hoping they have the answer. You have the answers in you right now. You don't have to, you don't need anything else. I promise you. The people who just get into it and it's like, if I just had one more piece of information, I would have what I need in order to make the next step into entrepreneurship. I could finally, quit my job. I could finally, change my relationship. I could finally find somebody in a relationship. I could finally have love in my life. You know what? You have those things right now. I promise you. And if you don't, ask yourself, what do you want?
See, but don't you find that a lot of people can't answer that question?
So this is where it gets kind of meta. Like, what do you want? Well, I want to know what I want. Like, okay, let's start with that one. Let's crack that one open. Because I know I was there for a long time. It's like, I don't know what I want. I'm like, okay, well, why the hell do you want to know what you want? Like, what is that going to do for you? So work on that step. It's like, what might I need?
Right. Well, here's what I hear is you just took the listeners through a process where there could be some self-discovery. I love the question, by the way. Questions, I think.
Now, it is self-discovery, but remember, this is the book of human life, right? This is the human book that you were supposed to get, right? You already have all of this in you. These are just the questions that just like kick it off so that you can start paying attention to it, okay?
Right.
Yeah.
So I think questions are the answer to everything because we do not question ourselves enough.
And notice that's another belief.
Okay. Fair enough. But in that same vein, people don't have the knack of questioning their own beliefs, which is another belief. Right. But I mean,
and what if they did?
Well, if they did, they'd be
all
able to
people
right to. In theory, yes.
All right. So what's a belief that you had as a kid? That's mine. Or what's a belief that you had last year? Did you ever believe that you wouldn't have a podcast?
You know what?
When you were in the Marines, you think,
no. I will tell you 3 months ago that I didn't even think I was going to have a podcast.
So that's a belief that changed, right?
It is, but it's not a life belief.
What's the difference between a life belief and everything else? Now you're categorizing beliefs?
Well, and you're proving what I believe you're proving my point is that people can't change on their own because they don't know how to question themselves enough to be able to make the change. What you have the ability to do, I have the ability to do, others have the ability to do, is help with people make the change by getting them to question their own thought process by questions.
Okay.
You okay with that?
Sure. I mean, like if you need the questions asked, great. That's perfect. I think that is the powerful thing. Ask the questions. Now, where we may agree or may not agree, I don't know, is that I promise you I don't have your answers.
Oh, 100%.
I will never have your answers. I barely have my ansers. And my answers change, like I don't even know what I'm having for lunch. So like I'm not gonna be your answer person.
Right. No, absolutely. And nobody can have the answers for you. They come within, but it's the questions that unlock what you already know to be true.
You have those resources. Yes, you already have that stuff.
Why do you think people don't spend enough time on themselves? Because I think that's one of the downfalls of society.
Yep.
And I think it's also the number one factor why people don't live fulfilled lives. So why don't they spend enough time working on themselves?
Feels better not to. Totally feels better not to. You get rewarded to be with your family. You get rewarded to be with your significant others. You get rewarded to be with your friends. You get rewarded to be at work, even if you don't like your job. I mean, it's like, you know what? The people in my community, my friends, my family, my parents, whatever, they're saying you got to be working. So you're satisfying them in some way, and you're feeling good about satisfying your friends, your family, your whatever, right? You feel that makes you feel good. What not necessarily makes you feel good is paying attention to yourself. You might think it's selfish. You might be like, you know what? And you might mix up self-soothing with self-care. That is super common. Like it feels good to sit on the couch with a pint of Ben & Jerry's and a scotch. That feels good. Watching Netflix, right? That's self-soothing. That's because you've burned yourself out in your vocation. You've burned yourself out in everyone else.
I want to make sure I understand what you mean by self-soothing. Is that self-soothing or is that escapism?
That's total escapism.
Okay, all right. We're saying the same
thing. And I'm not saying it's bad either. I'm saying that if that is your default mode and that's where you stay and that's where you're stuck, you don't have any choice. That is what you do. Now that is it. Think of your life choices as a menu, like a menu in a restaurant. You will always choose the best thing on a menu. Go into a restaurant and try and pick the third best thing. You can't, right? You always choose what is on that menu that is the best for you at that moment. If your behaviors are the pieces on that menu, if your beliefs are the things on that menu, and you only think you have one thing on that menu, well, that's a pretty shitty menu. So let's start adding new things to your menu. You are in a cage of your own making. It's you know what? The people who start with I can't and I won't and I don't, I'm well, what would happen if you did? How do we get from can and will and do, from the can't and won't and don't? It's well, my kids. And I'm do your kids want you dying? Oh, no. Your kids want you sick? Oh, no, they don't want that at all. They want me around. I'm good. Do you think it would be okay if you paid a little bit more attention to yourself, if you could be around for when your kids graduated college or got married or would you like to be around with your grandbabies? Would you like to be playing with your grandbabies, maybe even playing with your great-grandbabies? Yeah. I'm okay. All right. Then let's make some changes. Let's put some more things on your menu.
I love that thought process. I haven't heard it put it out as a menu, so I'm going to let you say that you invented that one and own that one. I like it.
No. Some of my best mentors are the ones that gave me that one. Thank you. I will take the credit of passing it along.
Right. Well, the rule is, if you use it more than twice, now it's yours. So just own it. At least that's what one of my mentors told me. But so this is wild. I got to say, it's the first time I've had somebody on the show that took it to this in depth of a philosophy. So I really, really appreciate that. And I'm going to challenge the listeners to go back and make sure they wrote down those 5 questions, because even as you were saying the questions and I'm going through my own head, I'm shit. Well, shit, right? Because you start, questioning and your own things going in your own head. And I wouldn't be truthful if I didn't say, if I tried to say otherwise. Outside of those questions, what's something that tangible that people can use to continue to work on themselves?
I got this one. I got this one down. How's your sleep?
How's my sleep?
How's your sleep? What would you say is your sleep like?
I go to bed 10:30. I usually pop up around 3 to take a piss, and then I'm back up at 5:20.
Nice. Every night? Most
Every
nights?
night.
You ever have trouble sleeping?
Not really a whole lot.
Brilliant. You are in a vast minority, my friend. A lot of people I know don't spend any time thinking about how they sleep. They just they collapse at some point, they can't get to sleep, or they wake up early, or they wake up tired, or they're tired through the day, on and on and on. It's one of those things where they just they phone it in. This is a third of your life. A third of your life is sleep. One of the things I do with almost all of my clients, so I'd say 80, 90%, is go through sleep hygiene with them, really fixing their sleep. Because as soon as you get a little bit tired, as soon as you get a little bit that throws everything off. You don't make the best decisions. You're not in the best mood. And underneath the covers, biologically, metabolically, your system is all screwed up. You cannot burn the fats that you need to make. You cannot repair the muscle that you want to build or you want to maintain. Your immune system is not functioning as properly. If you get so little sleep, you know how quickly you'll get sick? Over and over and over again. So the first thing you can do, the first thing that you can pay attention to is your sleep. And so for all your listeners, I'm going to have a website just for you guys that will have all of my tips to like sleep like a pro. There's 3 of them that you have to do right now. And I'll give you the URL for this. But the 3 that you have to do right now is make it cold, make it quiet, and take out all of the electronics. So your TV, your laptop, your phone, everything. Go get an alarm clock, like, old school 90s, just like all of the electronics. Take out. Your bedroom is for 2 things and 2 things only. They both start with S.
Soccer,
and
right?
Not social media. 2 things.
I'm going to question, because why silent? Because I, every night, and this comes from just being in the Marine Corps, have to have a fan going.
Okay. Oh, yeah. All right.
Background noise. Right.
Okay.
So when I heard silent,
background, silent, quiet. Yeah. People, particularly people who live in urban environments who have a trouble with silence sure. Noise machines, those kind of things, or fans. Yeah. Those can those can be quite soothing. I will challenge you though, is give it a shot, and give it a shot for 2 weeks, just 2 weeks, just so that you notice something different. See how it works.
Here's what I need you to do then.
So give it a shot.
I'm going to give you my wife's cell phone number, and you're going to call her up and tell her we're turning the fan off at night. And then you convince her I'm in.
I can do that. So I'll have a website for you and your listeners, and you can pass it along.
Awesome. That's awesome. Well, man, I got to tell you, Dave, it's been fun having you on the show. This has been a wild, kind of trippy, ride with you. I appreciate the challenge, and I appreciate the thoughts behind it all. And really, I appreciate the tactical stuff, things that people can implement right now. People, a lot of times in kind of that self-help world, they don't always get tactical. It's all theories and philosophies. So I appreciate the tactics. So, where do you think all this journey's taken you? Well, where are you going with all this? I mean, are you going to be the next guru? And I hate that word. Are you going to go big on stages? Are you just going to, keep helping these senior executives that are trying to live the way you were?
A friend of mine, we go out to lunch once a quarter or so, once or twice a year, and she'll sit down and she'll like, okay, this is my goal. I'm going to make this amount of money. These are all the steps that I'm going to be doing. And she has these huge laundry list of like check. I'm like, cool, all right. And you know what? More often than not, she hits them. I'm like, nice, great. And she's like, well, what are you going to do for the next year? I'm like, you know what? And I come up with this vague something. It's like, I don't really know. I'm like, but it's going to be something like this. And she's like, well, that's not very specific. And I'm like, eh. And so like a couple of years ago was like, you know what I want? I really want to be talking in front of a group of, however I define my people, like people who are like in some sort of self-awareness or self-improvement stuff. I want to be talking and teaching and being a part of that. And I want to be paid in order to do that. Right. Like I want to do that. She's like, how are you going to do that? I'm like, I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. And here's the thing, is we both met our goals. A year later and change, I was being flown down to LA to give a talk in front of all these people. And there was nothing in me a year before that said, hey, that's what's going to happen. And I'm going to follow these exact steps in order to do it. Now, and this isn't like manifesting or any kind of like, like asking, whatever. This is about like getting your subconscious to work for you. It's like, this is like, I knew that I had this goal in mind, and I worked very hard in order to stay in a lane, right? Make sure I'm not going like way off in left field and way off in right field, but I wasn't making exact steps in order to say, I'm going to go talk in LA at this day, because here was the magic part, is that as soon as I had a super specific goal, it completely blinds me and completely narrows me to possibility. Because if I say something very, very specific, then I'm going to get very, very specific, or I might not, right? Like I might not hit that goal or hit it in time, or like New Year's resolutions, I think are among the crappiest things that people can do for themselves. So I set a direction and I set an intention of like helping people do change work and how that's going to manifest itself and how it is moving forward. And I'm doing things like I'm talking to more people. I'm doing more podcasts. I'm doing those kind of things. And I'm not sure where it's going to go, because as soon as I say, you know what, Donnie, I'm going to be like on a stage in front of 1 million people, and I'm going to be doing this, then suddenly I'm not going to be the guy who's on stage in front of 1 billion people. I've just said no to that. I'm like, well, you know what? I'm going to be kind of open to the magic that happens, because I can't even imagine who I am today. I had no idea a year ago that I would be where I am right now. And I have no idea where I'm going to be a year from today.
Dude, that's awesome, brother. I appreciate it. You and I have a very similar philosophy in there. I'm not a goal setter. I like milestones, right?
Yeah.
With some places and down the way that we can get to. So I love that. Here's how we're going to wrap up today, dude, because I loved having you on the show. If you were going to leave my audience with a phrase, a slogan, a quote, a mantra, something they can carry with them on their journey that they can pull out, especially when they're stacked up against it and going through their life, what would be that quote or phrase you would say, use this in time of need?
You know what? I put one on my Instagram yesterday, actually, and these exact words came out of my mouth, and I was certain that in my entire life, these words would never come out of my mouth. And it was, wow, that's some mad wisdom, Wesley Snipes. I'm like, again, I never thought that phrase would come out of my mouth. And here's what it is. And I encourage you guys to follow my Instagram. It's ridiculous. You know, I just post my weird life on it. It was, don't let the internet slow you down. Nobody's posting their failures.
Right.
I'm like, damn. I'm like, yeah, right.
Go deep for that one.
Right? Like, damn, that is some mad wisdom. So, like, look, you can't read other people's minds. You can't predict the future. You can't. I promise you can't. If I could predict the future, I wouldn't be talking to you all. I would be playing lotto. You cannot do it. So don't worry about other people. You got you. That's what I got for you today.
Awesome, brother. Thanks for being on the show. I really, really appreciate you.
Thanks so much, Donnie.
You know what, guys? Really, thank you for listening to this episode. I really appreciate it. It's a lot of fun putting these together. I wanted to make sure before we get out of here that you knew what we were doing with social content. What we found was because of the podcast, we have a unique way of helping you get your social content out on a very easy way. What we're doing is we're interviewing people, and from that interview, we will capture a lot of information that will then be turned into videos, memes, articles, all things you can use for your social content. I know, like for me, one of the biggest struggles I had was, what do I put out there? What do I say on a regular basis? Well, we'll help do all that for you. So if this is at all of interest to you, reach out to us and let us help you grow your social media channel. I can tell you I did this for my business, and my social media is completely taking off. My Instagram, since I started doing this, jumped over 10,000 followers, and it continues to grow. So if this is at all of interest to you, check the bottom of the show notes for the link that says, Get My Social Content Done right now.